Just how smart were people in the so-called Dark Ages? Here's an Undeceptions instant expert. Sarah Foote is the Regius Professor of Ecclesiastical History at the University of Oxford. Alongside her many publications and projects, Sarah has emerged as one of the foremost authorities on the Venerable Bede. Historians have long recognised Bede as the greatest Anglo-Saxon scholar of his day, and he's certainly the father of English history. A towering intellect, Bede is one of the many proofs that the Dark Ages weren't that dark. Astronomy? What about astronomy? I mean, because that's connected to the date of Easter, but what does he write about the stars? I mean, it's obviously observational astronomy. It's not astronomy like we know it today.
No, it is observational astronomy, but let's be very clear. Bede knew absolutely that the Earth was round. He understood.
Sorry, Sarah, this was the Dark Ages. They didn't know that.
Bede explains to you why we know the Earth is round, because he talks about the curved horizon. And he knows that the stars that we can see in the Northern Hemisphere sky are not the stars that you see in the sky of the Southern Hemisphere. He is because calculating the date of Easter means synchronising a solar and a lunar calendar. He is extremely interested in the moon and the moon's workings. He is also the first person lucidly to explain why the moon determines the phasing of the tides. And this brings us back to Bede's interest in and obsession with the sea. Bede lived on the north coast. He could watch the tides coming in and out, and he worked out that the phasing of the tides works with the waxing and waning of the moon. And it seems likely that he had observers up and down the north coast also marking the tide on the beach and sending their observations back for him. So he got further than earlier thinkers in explaining that.
Well, and that's an empirical approach to knowledge.
Very much so.
And before the 16th century?
And a willingness to challenge his earlier pagan classical Roman and patristic sources and say, no, I don't think this is right, because my observation would lead me to different answers. Nobody writes history without applying their own social, cultural, religious ideas to what it is they're writing. We all write histories that make sense of the past and explain it in ways that matter for us. I wrote my first book about religious women in the church in England through the 1990s, at a time when the church in England was battling over whether or not women should be ordained to the priesthood. 20 years later, it's absolutely clear that I was playing out those battles through my writing in the past, though I wouldn't say I did that consciously. Bede is overt about what his overarching message is. He's very clear that he is...
He's not hiding the ball.
He doesn't. It's not as if you need, in any sense, to unpick this to find it. It's there in plain sight in front of you.
But then I return to my question, is it junk history as a result of this? I'm trying to get your sense of the historiography here. I mean, is he careful? Is he measured? Does he use sources? Do you get a sense that you're reading someone who's trying to really tell you what happened?
It is not Bede's intention to describe for us who were the kings of the different kingdoms, how they were related to one another, how they won battles against one another. But that's what we use it for. Can we rely on him? When it comes to chronology, I think we really can, because of the efforts that we can see him going to reconcile different written and oral sources that he's got that tell you about kings' reigns and measure them together. He uses documentary sources. 1/7 of the text of the history is copied out, papal letters. He is a bit partial in his use of papal letters. One of the things that Bede never tells us is that at the time of St. Augustine of Canterbury and the English mission, the Roman Church was not calculating Easter by the method that would become standard in the 7th century, and it's the method that's agreed at Whitby. In any letter before the Synod of Whitby, where a pope describes how to calculate the date of Easter, they do it according to the wrong method, and Bede just cuts that out. So he omits the description, and then he carries on. Now, he is deliberately falsifying the past for us. There's something he's not telling us. But there's also a real rigour there. The fact that he has consulted lots of texts. He sent a monk from Canterbury to Rome to bring that materials for him. He wrote round the church in England and asked people for sources. He's very careful about who his witnesses are. This was told me by this venerable bishop who was there. This was told by a venerable bishop to somebody who told me. This is something that they say in monasteries. This is what the people say. He's got a clear gradation of who his sources are. We can learn more about what England was like in the 7th century from Bede than from any other single source. If we were to say it's just Christian propaganda, then there's an awful lot that we're missing out on.
Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this chance to become an instant expert. You'll find loads more on this topic, plus a bunch of other informative videos over at the Undeceptions YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Undeceptions. See ya.